Monsters invade Earth. Man travels to the future to fight alongside his daughter. Countless alien species have taken over the Earth. They feed on human flesh and blood. Human civilization faced an unprecedented disaster. The Earth was quickly and completely overrun. Less than 500,000 humans survived. For the sake of the continuation of human civilization, a global alliance of scientists finally succeeded in developing a weapon that will turn the tide of war. Live from the 2022 World Cup final. A blinding light appeared over the stadium. A pair of heavily armed warriors appeared out of nowhere. Evrion's first thought was that aliens had invaded Earth. At this moment, the woman in the lead signaled the crowd not to panic. She called herself Hart from the Earth 30 years later. There's an uphill battle going on there. Alien creatures have taken over Earth. That's why she came here to ask for help. Hart's words were broadcast live around the world. Officials quickly verified the story. It was finally confirmed that Hart's story was true. In order to save human civilization, they immediately started recruiting people from all over the world, and through the time machine of the future civilization, sent the soldiers to the future battlefield. However, the casualties were still very high. They had no choice but to expand the scope of recruitment. Ordinary people were sent to the battlefield. Danny, the hero, became the chosen one. He was a former Special Forces officer. He retired and became a biology teacher. One day, he was teaching his students. Suddenly, he received an urgent notice to join the army. He went to a military base to report. The staff brought in a strange machine. Danny put his arm in the machine. The screen soon showed him he has only 7 years left to live. Danny was shocked, and internally, he asked how he died, but there was no answer. Then a sharp pain hit his arm. 3 special chips were implanted in his skin. A strange wrist brace was added to his arm. The staff told him it can only be removed after the end of military service. The entire military service lasts 7 days. After 7 days, he'll be forcibly transported back. Danny said goodbye to his wife and 7-year-old daughter and returned to the military base. This time he's going into battle with a group of civilians. Most of them had never been in combat before. They don't even know how to use basic firearms. They all knew that if they went into battle, the chances of coming back safely are almost zero. A man in red short sleeves was at odds with the nervous crowd around him. Charlie, a teammate, told Danny that the man's name was Dory, and that he was a survivor of 3 battles, and he brought back a monster's claw. Danny was intrigued by the man. Just then an alarm sounded inside the base, signaling that they must travel to the future immediately. At that moment, a huge white light appeared above Evrion's head, forming a giant wormhole. Under Hart's command, everyone raised their guns and positioned themselves, and in the next second, everyone was sucked into the wormhole. But the moment Danny entered, an alarm went off, alerting the crowd that the coordinates had been entered incorrectly. Due to the wrong coordinates, most of them fell to the ground directly. Only a few landed on the rooftop or pool and escaped. Nearly half of them were lost before the battle started. Danny climbed out of the pool and was disbelieved by what he saw. The world of the future was a purgatory. That's when Commander Mai told them that the city had been taken over by alien beings. The city has been taken over by alien creatures. The military decides to bomb the city to get rid of all the monsters. However, before the bombing could begin, they had one more task to accomplish. The lab has been overrun by monsters and the researchers are trapped inside the building. He's appointed Danny as team leader and asked him to lead a rescue mission. Instead, all the researchers were killed. At Mulray's direction, Danny led the team further into the area, preparing to evacuate as soon as they had the information. The bombers will be in position in 6 minutes to carpet bomb the entire city. But just as they were carefully descending the stairs, suddenly, there was the sound of a monster's roar. The men immediately opened fire on the monster. However, the bullets did very little damage, and the crowd could only run in panic. One of the team members tried to close the door, but was knocked away by the monster's brute force. Soon the bullets were all empty, but the monster was unharmed. Danny rushed to pick up the fire axe and chopped towards the monster, although it was still very dangerous to hit the monster. Luckily, Dolly arrived in time with her men and shot the monster to death. The team immediately withdrew from the building without stopping, but at this time, a large number of monsters emerged on the street. Murray sent an armored car to meet them. The team went through the red smoke zone, looking for a ray of hope. When they saw the armored car not far away, the members cheered at once. But in the next moment, the receiving team was wiped out. More and more monsters were coming, and the team suffered heavy casualties. Luckily, the bombers had already arrived at the battlefield. A few missiles were dropped, and the monsters on the battlefield were instantly destroyed. The city is full of monsters, and they're being caught up again. The next round of bombardment is about to begin, and Murray screams at the top of his lungs for them to evacuate. In order to buy time for the team, 2 of the injured team members come forward. and choose to die with the monsters. The bombers were back in position and the city was in ruins. When Danny woke up again, he was lying in the hospital of the base. This time, only 3 soldiers survived, but their 7 days of service were not over. They were to be deployed again. Dory told Danny he only had 3 months to live, but he doesn't want to die a meaningless death, so he goes into the future over and over again. Then he met Commander Murray. The moment he looked at the woman, he felt a sense of familiarity. It wasn't until the commander said his name that Danny realized that the woman in front of him was his daughter. However, this is not the time to talk about old times. There was only one way to solve this crisis. It turns out that monsters are like ants on Earth. A group of males guards a queen, who reproduces for them. He'll lead a team to the alien creature's nest to capture the female, to extract the serum and study the toxin that will kill the creature. Danny's mission is to take the toxin back to the past, and use the resources of the time to mass produce it, thus destroying the White Chongdin in one fell swoop. The helicopter arrives at the monster's lair, and sprays tranquilizers over it. Dozens of fighters descend into the cave, and try to pull out the female White Chanticleer using a rope, but they are met with a counterattack. Murray rushes into the cave and directs the men to take control of the creature's tail, then orders the men to unleash fire into the cave. Under the burning flames, the monster could only run away frantically, but at the same time, the surrounding monsters are rapidly converging on the cave. Danny in the helicopter learns that Maury is injured, and slides down the rope into the lair. Murray is being pinned down by the monsters. Danny clamps his hands on the creature's tail to prevent it from spewing out its bone spikes. The group then works together to put the creature in a special cage, but just as they were about to return to the base, a massive outpouring of monsters destroyed the helicopter in an instant. After a fierce battle, the two of them finally escaped from the monsters. They rode the helicopter to a military base on the sea, which is the last line of defense for the human race. The female monster has been transported back to the base. Murray immediately performs a serum extraction, and invites Danny to be his assistant. Danny was proud of his daughter's skill, but he was also more reluctant to let go of him. After tens of thousands of simulations, Murray finally developed a toxin to destroy the monster, but then the anesthetized monster suddenly woke up. In the next second, the ear-splitting alarm sounded. The defense line of the sea base was breached. Countless monsters climbed up the defense wall, and the whole base fell in an instant. Murray immediately evacuated with Danny. They had to get out of there with the toxin. The two were heading to the penthouse tarmac under the cover of their teammates. But halfway to the penthouse tarmac, they were confronted by monsters. They fought frantically and finally managed to reach the top floor. But just as they were about to board the helicopter, a bone splinter came through the air and hit Murray. Danny immediately shot it away, and then took his daughter with him, but never expected an out-of-control ship to collide with the base. The base was instantly reduced to a sea of flames. To make matters worse, Danny had very little time left. In 1 minute, he'll be automatically transported back 30 years. Knowing there was no hope of escape, Murray gave Danny the toxin in his hand, and solemnly requested that he must return alive. As soon as the raw words were out of his mouth, the female monster reappeared and yanked at Murray's feet, trying to pull him off the platform. Danny reacts quickly and pulls on his daughter's hand. Time travel time has expired and Danny is transported back 30 years. Danny passes out before he can surrender the toxin. However, when he woke up, he was given desperate news. Hart told him the base in 2025 had been destroyed. 2 time machines have been broken and they can no longer travel to the future. At the same time, civil unrest erupts within the population. Officials have to stop supporting the future battlefield and wait for disaster to strike. The toxin that Danny brought back is meaningless. Looking at his young daughter, Danny's heart was filled with grief and resentment. Thinking of Murray, when she grows up, he resolves to stop the biological invasion and give his daughter a happy and stable future. A thought came to Danny's mind. Maybe the aliens had already landed on Earth and only exploded en masse 30 years later. So Danny immediately found Dory and sent the claws he brought back from the future to Charlie's lab for analysis. The research revealed that the creatures had landed on Earth thousands of years ago, but had been sleeping under a glacier until the melting of the snowy mountains woke them up 30 years later. The scene changes and the group arrives in Russia without incident. At that moment, the detector suddenly jumped wildly, indicating the existence of an abnormal energy magnetic field here. A huge snow crater into the eyes of all the people. Danny intuition must be hidden underneath. He immediately commanded the team to carry out blasting, and indeed found a huge hole in the snow under the ice layer. An alien spacecraft sealed in ice appeared in front of them. They use a chainsaw to cut the ship open and enter the interior only to find that the alien piloting the ship has turned into a dry corpse. This means that the ship's owners are not monsters. So where did these monsters come from? Finally, we found something in the cargo hold. A large group of monsters are being held here. Without further delay, They injected the toxin into the monsters, and in the next second, the wails of pain were heard. But what's worse is that the howling woke up the other monsters. They rushed out of the incubator and fled frantically towards the outside of the ship. In order to prevent the white gut din from running out of the lair, the team finally chose to detonate the explosives and die with the monsters. However, two monsters still escaped from the ship. Danny was able to run them off with his snowmobile. However, the wounded monster became more manic and spewed out bone spikes, knocking away Danny's pistol and then shooting him in the leg. Danny takes the opportunity to stick the toxin into the creature's leg, but he never expected the monster to cut off his arm to survive. Danny immediately makes a sound to attract the monster, and prepares to jump off the cliff with him to his death. In the nick of time, Danny knocked him off his feet, and slashed his throat with his claws. Then he pushed a whole bottle of toxin into her mouth. The toxin instantly attacked, and began to corrode the monster's body. The monster lost all power to resist and was kicked off the cliff by Danny, eventually falling into a puddle of mud. In this way, Danny eliminated all the alien creatures in advance, not only changed his daughter's fate, but also saved all mankind. If you liked this video, like, comment and subscribe. Let's see you in the next issue for more great movies.